All right, so let's take a look at some form elements. We did discuss this a little bit last time we met. We have the input fields that allow us to gather information from our users, right? So they can type something. There's quite a few different types of input fields. There's just plain text, or you can also choose different types for different data types, right? For dates, for telephone numbers, for emails, and we can do that by using the type attribute, whether we want text, telephone, or email, and this will create input fields that provide some minor validation, right? If it's a number, if you're asking for a number, for instance, it won't let you type any characters, right? Also, if it's a date, it'll give you a date picker. If it's an email, it will give you the email keyboard. It won't allow you to type in unnecessary characters. Yes.
In the label tag for the for attribute, does it have to refer to an ID for the input?
Yes, an ID.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we'll play around with that in a minute. Also, you can provide a placeholder. Placeholder is kind of like a grayed out sample piece of data that you're expecting folks to type in to give them a hint of what it is that you're asking them to type. Sometimes the placeholder is kind of a redundant, since you might already have a label, right? But any hint you can use to give some guidance to the user to type the correct information in there, the better. The title here can also be used to provide kind of like a tooltip, right? So that if you hover your mouse over the element, right, you get a small tooltip with whatever you type in the title, right? And the title can be as long as you want. So you could have an entire paragraph describing the piece of information you're expecting in there, okay? That would otherwise be very, very ugly to display otherwise, right? And as our colleague was mentioning, the when you click with the mouse on an element, now that element becomes active. It has focus, so you can start typing in there. And now in smaller screen, like in mobiles and whatnot, sometimes it might be hard to press or select the right input field for me to start typing. Anything that I could do to make the area clickable bigger, it'd be more convenient for me, especially on smaller screens. Yes, and we can achieve this by using the label element here. Right? We can take a piece of text that describes the input field, but also associates that text. It associates it with the input field. So, for instance, this input field has the unique identifier first name field. Yes, I can associate this label, this piece of text first name, and can associate it with that input field by using the for attribute and say that this label is for this input field. What that buys me is that if I click on the element on the input field, obviously I'll get the focus, right? But if I misclick, or with my finger, if I misclick on the last name, I will also get focus on the input field. So I've in effect doubled my area, my clickable area, which is really nice, especially on small screen phones that I need to click on, especially when you're interacting with small input elements such as like checkboxes and radio buttons, right? That are really, really hard to peck at with your thumbs or with your index, right? So you can also notice that you can give input fields default values, right? With the value attribute, so you can give it an initial value for the input field. So here's an example for the date input field, where you use a type equal date. You have the label over there, date of birth referring to this input field, so that if I click on the label, it selects the input field. Also notice that if you use the type date, it gives you access to a date picker, right, where you can then select the actual date. Notice that you can initialize the value of the date picker, but this format is specific, right? This format is a string where you have a 4-digit year dash 2-digit month dash two-digit day, right? This is a standard, right? The actual way that it's displayed on screen depends on the localization of your browser, right? So if you're in the United States, it'll render month, day, year. If you're in Italy, it'll render day, month, year, right? If you are somewhere else in some other part of the world, the browser will render the actual date using your geographical area. Make sense, right? But regardless of where you are, the standard for given the date, right, is year, month, day. Right? Make sense? Right. So that's standard. But the actual date picker will render based on your location, geographical location. Okay. For dropdown, yes. Oh, I thought you. No. For dropdown, you can create also dropdowns where you can select from several options. Like for instance, you can select your role, right? Whether you're a faculty, a student, an admin, and you do that using the select element, and then the different options you can display them using the option element. And in the option element, you can type here the actual text that is going to be displayed when you click on the drop down. Yes. Now that text can be whatever you want to put in there, right? Usually it'll be some piece of some token, right? That it means something to the person who's selecting it, right? But you could nothing stops you from adding maybe some extra information here that makes it more clear. Like for instance, when you're selecting the expiration date of your card, right? And and you have to choose the month, right? And we don't remember if 3 was March or 4 was April. So sometimes what they'll do is they'll give you both, right? They'll give you the name of the month and they'll give you the digits, yes, to make it clear. So whatever you type in here in the option is for human consumption, right? To make it clear what it is that you're selecting. The actual value of the field, right, is by default is that text, whatever you select, right? But often that text is for human consumption. In a database, you're not going to store that, right? You're not going to store that information. Instead, you might typically give it an actual value that has meaning to your application, right? It has some data model representation where you have maybe some token from some enumerated data type, okay, of some token that means something to the application. So maybe admin in all caps, or student in all caps, or faculty all caps. Make sense? So it's a good practice to give an actual value of what will be sent over to the server, right? Instead of the human readable content. Make sense? Right. So it's a good practice to have the value. Yes. Name. Right. So the when you submit the form, right? The default behavior is that is to parse the form of whatever everything you've typed, and it creates an object that's going to send over to the server, right? Excuse me. When whatever the format of what you send over to the server is based on these names and the values, right? It'll create a name value pair list of things. So it says so it'll say, well, the name is role and the value is one of those, faculty, student, and admin. So it'll say role equal student, comma, first name equal blah blah blah, whatever. Yeah. So the name and then the value together create a whole string that gets sent over to the server as the